Hey everybody, you are listening to Herdwatching. I actually had an episode in the can about the Mueller indictments when he did the 13, it was almost a week ago now. And I've been, sort of editing and working on color grading it, but I'm not overly thrilled with the way the exposure came out, and it's been a week, so let's talk contemporaneously about sort of where we are now. So, as some of you, most of you, almost all of you know, Robert Mueller came out with a 13-person indictment against 13 people for something. It's the actual law that's broken is not nearly what the press and the Mueller staff is leaking the indictment actually was about. So the indictment actually covers wire fraud, basically various monetary and identity style felonies. What it doesn't cover, because what isn't a crime, is social media activism. There is no law that prevents a foreign national from buying ads on Facebook or posting on Twitter or attempting to exert influence over our electoral process, as long as they don't attempt to, hack computers or buy votes or whatever. In exactly the same way that you had many American citizens, businessmen, and miscellaneous other people who got involved in the Brexit decision. You have many American political action committees that attempt to influence birth control policies and abortion policy in other nations. They're activists for women's rights. They're activists for or against various political candidates. Our president, Barack Obama, campaigned strongly against Brexit and put the full weight of his office behind it. And the State Department spent a significant amount of money attempting to influence the elections in Israel. So I need you to really sort of take on board the idea that even government level political activism is neither new, unethical, or criminal. That the Russians may have spent money on social media in an attempt to influence our election is not in and of itself newsworthy. It's not new, it's not different, it's not criminal, it's not an act of war, it's none of that. So let's pretend for a moment even that the Soviet government took out full-page ads every day talking about how much they hated or loved one particular candidate. That is not an act that required the intervention or investigation of Robert Mueller or even the FBI or the Department of Justice. Potentially, the State Department might be the right people to look into the implications of that. Now, there isn't even that smoking gun. What there are 13 people who it looks like had a couple of $1 million to spend that they raised in various ways, who use that money on social media to amass a following. Most of the following they amassed, they did by automatically reposting political videos on hot button topics that they didn't even make. And if you look at the accounts that had the most viewers, those accounts were essentially nonpartisan, right? They would post an anti-Hillary video, they would repost an anti-Trump video, they would repost a pro-Trump meme, they would repost a pro-Bernie meme, they would repost an anti-Trump meme. They were just working the controversy to gain social media clout and followers, which they then used to essentially sow a little bit of chaos. And I say a significant amount of that. So at their peak, their largest single account could pull in about 100,000 followers to one of their tweets. To put that in perspective, I think Justin Bieber's cat has a Twitter following in excess of 100,000 people. Kim Kardashian has massive multiples of that number of influence. Justin Bieber himself has that significantly more influence than this entire, oh my God, Russian hacking attempt, of our elections, this massive Russian influence campaign that's in theory was backed by the full power of the Kremlin, was totally eclipsed by any given tweet by Rosie O'Donnell, essentially. So you got to really have a grip on how minimal this impact was. Okay? So that's kind of where we are with this. There's 100,000 sounds like a lot of people, but if 100,000 Twitter followers is what it takes to significantly impact the United States election, then you need to understand that Kim Kardashian, Taylor Swift, and Justin Bieber are choosing our next president, and we all might as well make them our robot overlords now. So clearly, despite all the attempts of CNN to inflate this, 100,000 people is just not enough. And further, so packing aside then the fact that the Russians had an influence on our election, which they clearly kind of did, but not really. And we'll get into the type of influence later. This is only noteworthy if it was clear that the Russians preferred one candidate over another. And as we've spoken about before, there's no indication that the Russian government had a preference for Trump or for Hillary on a strategic level. They were just interested in sort of churning the pot a little bit in the middle and sort of keeping America on the back foot so that we were less interventionist with Soviet policy around the world. In essence, because President Trump is a real problem for Vladimir Putin in a way that Hillary Clinton is not. Hillary Clinton is everything the Russians love. Predictable, manageable, and she can be bought. We know this because they've been buying her. When she was in charge of the State Department, they bought her left and right. They knew how to funnel money to Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton essentially had everything but a PayPal account that said buy influence here with a price list. Everybody wanted Hillary Clinton to be president. If you want to influence American politics, you wanted Hillary Clinton to be president. On the other hand, Donald Trump is a wild card. He's essentially unbuyable. You can't predict him. And on a strategic level, that's a serious problem for the Russians. So this whole crazy idea that the Russians wanted President Trump in because Hillary Clinton was going to be the strong iron fist that was finally going to bring Vladimir Putin to heel is some ridiculous fantasy you've been sold by a combination of the DNC and CNN, and I don't know how or why you would ever believe it when between Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama, who essentially was a child of hers, they never managed to even begin to slow the Soviets down. The Soviets got everything they wanted, and every time Vladimir Putin put even a little bit of alpha pressure on Barack Obama, he folded like a cheap suit. And anytime he put a little bit of pressure on Hillary Clinton, she slipped him an invoice via Bill Clinton and the Clinton Foundation. So even if we buy the idea that the Russians attempted to meddle in the election, they failed because the candidate they wanted did not become president. So anyway, so Bob Mueller, now having proven that there is no collusion between the between the Trump campaign and Russia, has now attempted to go for their sort of second string argument, this vague idea that the Russians interfered in the election, and the left unspoken is the idea that the Russians wanted Trump, and that therefore somehow it is your patriotic duty to make President Trump's life difficult because the Russians wanted him, so we should do what the Russians don't want. Now, interestingly, if you rewind the tape to during the election, you can find the same talking heads on CNN arguing that under no circumstances should we pick President Trump because he is so antagonistic to the Soviets that we're going to wind up in a war. Now we're supposed to not want President Trump because somehow or another the Russians love him. It's crazy. You know it's crazy. I know it's crazy. What's really, and even if we were to buy this whole narrative, what you're telling me is that the full weight of CNN, the full weight of MSNBC, the full weight of ABC, the full weight of Comedy Central, the full weight of Hollywood, the full weight of all the social media elite, and the Democratic Party, and Barack Obama, and the New York Times, and all the press, and all the world leaders who endorsed Hillary Clinton, they all were thwarted. Everything would have been fine if it wasn't for those meddling Russian kids and their dog, who somehow, with a couple of $1 million and some interesting Facebook posts, managed to ruin it all. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous, and people are buying it. And I can't help you. I'm simply here to speak. I'm going to tell you the way I see it, and there are some people who agree with me who will be vindicated. There are people who don't care, who just like the sound of my voice. There are people who disagree with me but are open to other information, and you are the audience I'm most interested in speaking to. And then there's a whole bunch of people who are just going to write this off as more sort of alt-right white supremacist idiocy, because that's the wall they've put up, the bulwark they've put up to stop any idea they don't like from actually reaching their brain. Welcome to those of you I can talk to. Enjoy yourself to those I can't. Those of you who hate Trump, doesn't matter. America's still going to be great for you too. Take it easy, guys.